Hello and welcome to the investment season of How to Start Up, a podcast for anyone starting or scaling a company. Hosted by me, Juliet Fallowfield, founder of the B Corp certified PR communications and podcast consultancy, Fallowfield & Mason, where we teach you how to own your PR in-house. Raising investment can be a daunting process, especially if you've never done it before. From knowing how to write a pitch deck to what type of investment is right for your business, there are so many things to consider. So in this 9th season, you'll hear from successful founders and entrepreneurs on what we should be doing now, next or never when considering investment. If you have any questions on these topics or more generally on communications, I'd love to hear from you on juliet@fallowfieldmason.com. I hope you enjoy the season. One of the most challenging aspects is knowing when the right time is to seek investment for your company. If too early, your business may not be ready. However, if too late, you may slow its growth potential down or miss your opportunity altogether. In this episode, I speak with Jo Fairley, co-founder of the renowned chocolate company Green & Blacks. Jo co-founded the business in 1991 with her partner Craig Sams to create the world's first organic chocolate and the UK's first fair trade mark product. Jo is one of the UK's leading female entrepreneurs and has been an inspiration to me throughout my whole career. Originally in PR and now as someone who started a business, I was so thrilled to be able to speak to her about her investment experience and hear her advice on the key considerations around the timing of raising investment. Hi Jo, thank you so much for your time today on How to Start Up. It's wonderful to have you here. It'd be great if you could start with a brief introduction as to who you are and a bit about the business that you'd founded.
I'm Jo Fairley and I'm co-founder with my husband Craig Sams of Green & Blacks. And I kind of never expected to have a business because I came into the business world as a journalist who was used to writing about lots of other interesting people having businesses and doing interesting things and was quite happy as an observer on the side. But the opportunity came along to launch the world's first organic chocolate, and having tasted 2 squares of the sample bar, which I found under a bank statement on Craig's desk, I nagged him to launch it under his Whole Earth brand. He had pioneered the whole sort of natural foods category as a sort of hippie entrepreneur back in the 1960s. But he didn't have the budget for launching a new brand in the middle of the year. And he also couldn't launch it under the Whole Earth name because it had sugar in. So it needed a whole new brand. And eventually, after nagging him endlessly, he turned around and said, "Why don't you do it?" Which meant I could take care of the PR and the marketing. He could do a lot of the backroom functions, bolting them onto the side of Whole Earth. But the really big catch was I had to finance it. And so it was my £20,000 nest egg from selling my flat before I moved in with him, which basically was what purchased 2 tons of chocolate and left me 38 quid in the bank.
Wow. So you went all in. And it's thanks to that decision that we have Green & Blacks in our lives today. So thank you.
It is indeed. And I wasn't even scared. I mean, that was the thing. I had such faith in this product. And I knew that we could be successful in the natural food trade. What I never, ever anticipated and would have made me too scared to start it was imagining that it would scale to the extent that it has and become such a big thing. I thought we were going to have a nice, successful product in the natural food trade, and that would be just fine.
Yes. It's actually, a lot of entrepreneurs have said this. It's like, had you told me what I know now back then, I wouldn't have done it. But thank God I didn't know because I did it.
I think the other thing about that is that you would then question every decision that you made and go, oh, is this right for the exit strategy or whatever? Whereas we just did things that were instinctive and that felt right.
Yeah.
And I think that was largely a factor in the success of the brand.
Well, obviously everyone has heard of Green & Blacks and it's hugely successful, but I'm sure at the beginning when you started with that £20,000 sort of leap of faith, that was your initial investment, self-funded. At what point in the Green & Blacks story did you go out and seek investment?
Well, for the first 9 years of the brand, we were able to finance it through invoice discounting. So basically, we had Barclays as our bankers and they offered a line of invoice discounting credit. And because we had really good customers, so we went very quickly into supermarkets and the major wholesalers. They were good, insurable customers. And so we could draw down 75% of the value of that invoice to Sainsbury's or to Waitrose and use that to fund our growth. and get the other 25% less Barclays commission when Sainsbury's or Waitrose paid their bill. And in food, that's, really crucial, because sometimes, I think Boots now take 180 days to pay suppliers. And so you're having to basically bridge finance their business. So we were able to do that because of invoice discounting. And we managed that for about 9 years. And then we knew that to get to the next level, I think we were at about 2.5 million by then. To get to the next level, we had to take investment, because all of our money was tied up in stock. We were growing and growing and growing. And the faster you grow, the tighter the cash flow is and the harder it is. Everyone thinks, you're growing at 100% a year. Sounds great on paper, but you've got no wiggle room with your cash flow at all. So we couldn't advertise, we couldn't promote. It was stifling product development. It meant that we couldn't bring in the kind of high-level talent that we needed to grow the business to the next stage.
So were you feeling sort of frustrated and stagnated? You couldn't move forward?
We were feeling, bound by our cash flow. It was just so restricting. And so that was the point at which we decided to look for investment. And in fact, we had two potential investors, which was a great position to be in, because you can play them off against each other.
And did you only want one?
No, we knew it was going to be one, but the question of which one was it. And so we were probably able to get a bit more, because there was someone else in the picture. I think when you're throwing yourself on someone's mercy, then that's when you can be taken advantage of, basically.
And with your pipeline, were you up against it? Did you have a deadline that you had to meet to get this investment, or were you being able to take your time with it? Because I know a lot of founders say that it can be stressful and you take the wrong money if you're under pressure.
Yes, I think taking the wrong money is a real problem. And I think one of the things we've managed to do is navigate really well the waters of all the different stages of our ownership. Craig and I are still chocolate ambassadors for Green and Blacks, and that is 18 years after the business was first sold to Cadbury's. And that's really, I think, quite unique to have that founder relationship with the brand that ultimately your product sits under. So we took private equity investment through a family office. So basically that means that, a wealthy investor or family group who've inherited a lot of money want to put money into, in this case, doing something good, which meant organic food. So it was a team of investors that had previously taken the new Covent Garden Soup Company from, I think, 2 million a year to 22 million and sold it for 28 million. And I felt that there were real parallels. We both felt there were real parallels with Green and Blacks, because that was a brand which, it was quite widely available, but you still felt in some way like it was your secret discovery, even though, by then it was a big name.
And they had a proven track record as well, so you knew they're capable.
And most importantly for us, they were going to bring talent into the business, because Craig and I, were so stretched by that point. We'd gone as far as we could go, and we were working 18-hour days, and we needed really high-level help at that point. We needed a great marketing director. For God's sake, I'm a journalist, I wasn't a marketing director.
But you were still a journalist through this process as well. You were still both having your day jobs.
Well, I was a journalist through this process because our cash flow was so tight that if I wanted to, buy shoes and take us out to dinner, I had to work. And I think that that's true of a lot of founders. Is it's more than a side hustle, but not giving up the day job sometimes is what you have to do to finance the growth of your business if you haven't got investment. And I think that's fine in the beginning. I think it's absolutely fine. But we just reached the point where we absolutely needed high-level help. And so it was just so important to us that they were going to bring money into the business, not just give us some money for our shares, but actually take a role in driving the business forward.
Well, that's an interesting point, because a lot of people think, we'll just get investment, we'll carry on doing what we want to do our way. Whereas if you have this support, it can be more than just monetary, presumably. And would you have advice for founders as to how to find the right investment?
I don't have advice on how to find the right investment. And I think that it is extremely tricky. We were very fortunate because actually investors came to us. And I think that often happens, if you're seen to be being successful, but, you shouldn't just be flattered into taking the first deal that comes along. And there are plenty of organizations out there that will sort of help you navigate those waters. I've been through the process of trying to sell another business, and that was not, we went to one of those companies that help you sell companies, and that wasn't a massively rewarding experience, actually. It ended up costing us quite a bit of money, and we didn't get a deal out of it at the end, mostly because we actually decided to go ahead on our own. But there are people that know how to do this, and if it's outside your skill set, then you definitely need advice and handholding and some help.
And when you go from that point where you've self-funded and you've built your business and you're feeling that stretch and that pain point, is there anything you can do to sort of plan ahead for when you then go out for investment?
The answer is everything. I mean, any potential investor is going to want to know, they're going to shine their torch in every single area of your business. And so you've got to make sure that all your contracts are rock solid, that all your, that things aren't done on the nod, that where you've got a relationship with somebody, it is formalized. You've got to have all your financials right there on paper for them to look at, going back, however far. You've got, you have to ultimately, when it comes to the due diligence element, disclose absolutely everything about your business. I mean, they see, your underwear drawer and your laundry basket, basically.
I was going to say, it feels like when you clean your house normally, but it's when you have friends around for supper that you clean it 10 times more and they get to benefit. Well, you should have done it years ago.
And multiply that by the power of 100 because you're asking for somebody's money. So all of your figures, you've got to be able to back them up. If you say that you've got a certain number of Instagram followers, they're going to want to know that you haven't bought those followers. I mean, all of those things you've got to think about. And what I will say is that selling a business, getting investment for a business, is a full-time job. And so it was okay for Craig and me because there were two of us. It's very hard if you're having to do this on top of your day job, on top of sort of strategizing for the future and driving the business forward. It's an extra pressure.
Well, it's funny, the last 3 years I found that I had my day job. So when I was made redundant, I was in PR and communications and I knew how to do that bit. And then starting a business is like, right, now I'm also finance, I'm IT help desk, I am recruitment, I have all these different hats. And then investment, a lot of people have said this as well, it's a whole other level of another role.
It's a whole other role, and it is a pretty full-time job that sits alongside your already full-time job and possibly your already nearly full-time side hustle, because that's how you're financing the business.
Yeah. I mean, how did you learn what you needed to do or what questions you needed to ask? Was it gut feel?
I have to say that I'm the right brain in this business and Craig is the left brain. And he has an economics degree from the Wharton Business School. He is much better able to do that kind of thing. But I think that if you are a sole trader, if you're running that business on your own, not necessarily just you, but with a team, you do have to look elsewhere for that help, unless you're the person in the business who is the kind of financial nuts and bolts. I don't think anyone can expect to be able to do that just on top of everything else that they do. And so maybe you've got a really good friend who you can turn to for advice. Maybe you've got someone who's been through this process, who can sit you down and talk you through it, etc. And I would do that. I would actually just look for help from people first of all, and then if you don't know anybody that can help you, will you please look elsewhere and go to an expert?
So it's knowing when to ask for help. And I think a lot of people said this, is like, you have to be vulnerable enough to put your hand up and say, I can't do this. Someone else will be better at this. But one question I had to ask or would like to ask is, in terms of when you go to investment, there's a lot of misconception that you get this cash injection and then you just carry on and do what you want to do with it. But you have a level of accountability to these people, obviously, because they're giving you their money.
Yes.
At what point do you know the level of equity to give to them?
it's really hard. I mean, you want to give away as little as possible. And it's very tempting when your back is against the wall to fall for, the first offer that comes along in exchange for 60% of your business or whatever. And actually, I informally advised some friends who were in business in the cosmetic world some years ago, probably 15 years ago now. And I remember meeting them at Paddington Station, and I remember them telling me how much they were going to get for what percentage of the business. And I said, you can't do this. You're giving away, I think it was 40% of the business at that time for not very much money at all. It wasn't going to see them through, a year probably. And sure enough, they had to go back with cap in hand for more. And then ultimately they had nothing left of their business. They exited with nothing. And that person who'd invested actually had the name of the business, which was their name. So, yeah. So
it's heartbreaking.
Disastrous. And also, I have to say, more fool them for not listening to me, because they could have avoided that situation. But what I think is interesting now is that you don't necessarily have to go down that route to take investment. And I think I'd like to flag up crowdfunding. So crowdfunding, I think, had we been starting Green and Blacks today, I probably wouldn't have put my 20,000 quid in. I would have crowdfunded it. And I'd have used something like Crowdcube, or for a smaller project, there's Kickstarter, and there's also Indiegogo. I invest in a lot of startups via those, 250 quid here, 500 quid there, through those platforms. And basically, you're putting together a business plan, you're making a little movie for the pitch online, etc. And you are getting money from people you've never met, who just believe in your idea and like the idea of putting their money potentially somewhere is going to make more for them than leaving it in the bank. And what I like about crowdfunding is that it's a form of market research. Now, I'm not a massive believer in focus groups and market research, but I think that if you can persuade people to invest in your business through crowdfunding, if that pitch attracts the investment that you need to get to the next stage of your business or to get your business off the ground, and that's a pretty good filter for whether that idea is going to play out in the wider marketplace.
But you've got amazing market research and live feedback.
I mean, you are giving away a certain amount of shares, but you're not giving away any power. So that means you do then have to drive the business forward yourself, or maybe use some of that investment to bring in the kind of talent that can do that for you. But it's not the same. It doesn't have the same pressure as going out and finding an investor who may be easy to deal with or may be tricky to deal with. And, I don't make a secret of the fact that I didn't get on brilliantly with the two guys who came in as private equity. They were fantastic at what they did, but I had real problems ceding control to them because...
And you can't fire them either.
You can't fire them. By then, they've got, in that case, more than 50% of your company, in which case you do not have the power to sit in a boardroom and tell them what to do. They have the power to tell you. And very often at that stage, when you've got a successful business and you're looking for the next level, they will ask for a majority investment, and you'll probably give it to them because they have got the money, they have got the power, and it is generally this 49-51% argument that is had about who ultimately retains control.
Well, I find it really baffling because I came into this by chance of the back of redundancy, and I just opened a laptop and started. And then it was a year in, a friend who became a coach for me said, well, is this a lifestyle business or are you going to sell it? It's like, I'm just trying to pay my mortgage right now. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just wanting to earn and have a role that I've created for myself. But it's really, I think I've witnessed a lot of people in the co-working place I go to that they are gunning for a certain end goal, and it doesn't hurt to think about that, of what are you doing this for? For me now, I've given myself a level of freedom and autonomy that I have never had in my previous roles. But if I went after investment and gave up the majority share of my business, I would lose that autonomy. It would feel like I've given myself another boss in a way. Is that the sense that you got?
yes, I mean, what I'd say to people like you is that and I think it's absolutely valid to want to hang on to 100% of your business. And if you don't need massive cash flow injections to fund stock, if you've got a virtual product, if you're selling talent and skills rather than actual physical bars of chocolate or widgets that have to be paid for, then I think it's extremely valid to just want to kind of motor on as you are now. But what I would say is that if you're going to do that, put money into a pension pot, because the point will come when you go, actually, I've had enough of this. I'm 60. I want to retire, and that's a really tough point to kind of then be scrabbling around to try to sell your business. So you need to be sure that you're going to have a kind of secure retirement. But I think it's a perfectly reasonable and understandable trajectory, and I don't think that people should feel in any way like they're a failure if they don't want to sell their business. If they just want to take control of it themselves. In our case, it wasn't a choice. We knew that we were growing, and there would have come a point where we couldn't pay our bills because of the cash flow challenges.
So that pinch point.
I think if you're awake at 2:00 in the morning, all entrepreneurs are awake at 2:00 in the morning, as far as I know, across the world, whatever the time zone. If you then can't get back to sleep because the worries are too big, then that's the time.
I think there's things, what you're saying, those real stress points that push you that step too far, and that pipeline. So don't have your back up against the wall in terms of timing. Forecast for that and know when that's coming.
Exactly. And it really is to do with kind of financially understanding your business and knowing where you are at any given point. I mean, I run the other businesses that I run through Xero, which is, a brilliant online accounting program. And it really gives you your cash position and who owes you. You don't have to do a massive cash flow projection. It's all right there in front of you. But I think that ignoring that side of your business, which is, easily done if you are a creative.
Yes. Two sides of your brain.
Literally not the right side of the brain. Do that at your peril. And I'm not great at maths, but I'm really good at looking at a balance sheet. I'm really good at instinctively feeling what position my business is in.
And it is something anyone can learn, because I've had friends who've been creative writers who are now freelance and self-employed, and I just don't do numbers, it panics me. It's like, you have to get therapy for that. You have to know your numbers, because you won't have a business if you don't, and just get to grips with it.
Yeah, we have to be financially literate. You even as a freelance journalist, you are a business. You've got to be able to manage your cash flow and know if you're going to be able to pay your mortgage, and know that in journalism, you've got fallow times and nobody's going to give you any work in August probably.
Yeah. And I think something about wasting time for me is time and money are the two big things in my life, and money will come and go. Time is a limiting factor. If I'm wasting time worrying about money, that's an inefficient use of time. So someone gave me the advice of have 6 months of salaries in the bank at all times. So if the August happens, you don't have to worry in September. You're fine for a little bit.
Exactly.
But in terms of timing, is there a sort of time advice that you give people of when to start thinking about it? Or should they always be thinking about it, even if they don't action it?
I think that, the more financially literate you are about how your business is, the less time it's going to take you to scrabble around and get the paperwork together.
Yes. So just be shipshape at all times. Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, I think the whole process probably took us 6 months from initial offer to completion. And let me tell you, those were the 6 most stressful months of my entire life.
Oof. Because of the worry or the not knowing or the scrutiny?
It ain't done till it's done, basically.
Yeah.
And I remember when we did take that first tranche of investment in Green and Blacks, we were in the solicitors at 4:00 in the morning. Our solicitor was going into their room, back and forth, last minute horse trading, etc. And in fact, we had to fly to California before the ink was dry, before we'd actually signed. Well, we'd signed, but it hadn't completed. And we landed in California. It still hadn't been done. 3 nights later, I woke up bolt upright in the hotel room saying something's wrong. And we rang London, and there was just some piece of paperwork that wasn't right. That needed to be found, or something like that was holding the whole thing up. And I felt like I didn't breathe for 4 days. I honestly felt like I didn't breathe for 4 days.
Is it the biggest challenge you faced in your business journeys, given how many you have?
I think it's probably the most stressful time. And actually now I would be much better armed to deal with it, because I do 10 minutes of meditation religiously every morning. And I have developed a mindset that enables me to be the calm at the center of the storm. So instead of being caught up in that storm, I would have been the calm at the center of it. I know now, because that's how I am in a crisis.
And experience is what you get after you've needed it. Now you've done it once, I guess.
Yeah, I hope I never need it again.
Really?
But I do think that making sure that you are mentally robust for the sale process is really important. I mean, I think as a leader, it's very important in business anyway to develop a kind of personal blueprint that ensures that you are at the top of your game. You've got people who depend on you. Put that oxygen mask on yourself before putting it on someone else, and never feel guilty about giving yourself that kind of TLC, because, you owe it to everyone around you to be able to deal with a crisis, or, steer a company through choppy waters, deal with a pandemic, whatever life's going to throw at us. And so I honestly think that getting mentally fit for a process like this is almost as important as getting financially fit for it.
Well, you were the youngest magazine editor in Britain at the age of 23. So you've always had leadership instinctively within you. Are there any other than meditation and sort of, you say get mentally fit, are there any other things that you found really have benefited you in business in terms of looking after yourself first?
I am religious about taking vitamins every day, because I know that my diet isn't going to give me everything. I'm often eating on the hoof and on trains, etc. So I take supplements, which a pharmacist at Victoria Health recommends what I should take. Should be a diet. And I do yoga when I can. I do 10,000 steps a day, almost religiously. I've got a fold-up walking machine under the bed in a spare room, and if it's foul outside, I'll use that. I listen to business podcasts while I'm doing it. So I kind of don't feel guilty about going for a walk in the middle of the day, because I'm refreshing my perspective on what I'm doing, which I think we have to constantly do. And I'm also listening to the business insights of other people, which, but when I get back to my desk, may change how I do things, and it will kind of build my armory of weapons and knowledge for business.
And it's pulling yourself out of the weeds, isn't it? We use Toggle to track all of our time because we work remotely as a team, and I've put in a walking toggle and a podcast toggle and a reading newspaper toggle, and it's like, team, go out for a 3-hour walk in the hills on a Wednesday lunchtime or afternoon, and I loved it. On the team call every Monday we do success and failure from the week before, and Francesca's like, oh, I was really struggling with a thing and I took your advice and I went for a walk and I came back and I had the answer. Like, yes, I need to do this too.
Walking does give you answers. It's absolutely extraordinary. It is my number one problem-solving tool, is to go for.
And do you get up and go when you've hit that wall and you're like, right, I just need a break now? Or do you do it first thing in the morning? Is it a routine thing for you?
It's slightly less scientific than that. If I look outside the window and it's not raining or the sun's out, that's more of a trigger than it's a, yeah. I mean, it's a bit weather related, but it's also, But
you're a better version of yourself if you do it for yourself.
Yeah, and I will sometimes go downstairs and use a walking machine if it's horrible. I mean, I live in Hastings, so we're in the front line of the weather. So sometimes it can be. It's glorious when it's glorious, but it can be, windy and stormy.
And do you think things like that, those self-preservation? So for me, I know if I meditate, exercise, drink water, and sleep well, which sound really simple, but actually very hard to do on a daily basis, I'm very much a better version of myself for my team and for the business. And I do it because I know it will make me more efficient at work. But do you think there are things, you said before, it's really worth mentally preparing yourself, but is it worth getting to know yourself as a human being before you become a founder?
Well, no, because I think you found things when you have a good idea, and it's so irresistible, the curiosity of what's going to happen if I don't do this, then that I don't know. But I think that, I'm very glad that in my career in business and magazines, and the whole well-being picture has become much more of a focus for people, because, it's not a sprint, it is a marathon. And you kind of have to be prepared as if for a marathon. And I see so many owners who just burn out and are exhausted and throw in the towel and walk away sometimes, just walk away from a perfectly successful business because they haven't got the energy to keep going. And so you really do owe it to yourself to take care of yourself. And we've only got one shot at this, So I think that kind of martyring yourself and putting yourself at the bottom of the priority list, which is what a lot of people do, is just so important. It should not be underestimated.
And you want to enjoy it as well. I think when you work this hard and you give yourself this autonomy and freedom at a massive risk. Well, actually, I now think I've diversified my revenue portfolio, to use some jargon, but going from one salary to now multiple clients. But it's not easy. But to do it, you also need, and friends have told me off and saying, well, you're not taking the freedom that you've given yourself. You need to go and work, say, from the Arctic for 2 weeks and take those opportunities that you've afforded yourself.
Yes.
And also celebrate the small wins. I think I fixed a laptop the other day and I was like, yes, this is a huge achievement today. I'll forget about it tomorrow.
I would still outsource that task, I'm afraid, but you're much techier than I am. But actually, it is, when you work hard, it is actually quite hard. I can't remember what it was the other day. I know. There was a film that I wanted to see down the road at the cinema, which is 100 yards away from where I live. And I had been planning to go. And on the day, I knew that I would feel so guilty sitting in that cinema watching a movie in the middle of the working day, which I should have probably been able to justify it for mental well-being, but I can justify a walk. I can't justify a movie. So I didn't go to the movie. I'm going to watch it on Netflix instead. But I think it is quite hard if you're used to working really hard.
And pre-pandemic working as well, that expectation, you're in before your boss, you stay until the boss leaves, you work hard, and there's core hours and extra hours, and you taking the afternoon off is not okay. Whereas you're working the evenings. Like, why shouldn't you have a couple of hours in the afternoon?
You're not going to get to be successful. You're not going to get to have a successful business that you might potentially sell unless you have a very strong work ethic. It's really hard to just switch that work ethic off for an hour and a half on a Thursday morning.
That's it. Yes, because you'll go to suddenly go, oh no, diversion over here. Oh yes. Well, when you work it out, Jo, please let me know.
Yeah, well, that's why they're listening to podcasts while I go for a walk. I can just mentally square it with my work ethic.
Well, you also know you are coming back refreshed with better ideas, and it's a more efficient way of working. So I'm with you on that one. And podcasts are everything.
I probably would have done after the Noel Coward film, but hey, it was just a very interesting exercise in getting to know myself a bit better.
Well, as a PR, I will invite you as a journalist to go and watch a movie as part of a press appointment, and then you can justify it that way. Perfect. Legitimised. We'll put it in toggle as a pitching moment. Something that we do with all of the episodes is ask the guest from the previous episode what would they'd like to ask the next guest. So we had Frankie, who's a financial advisor, particularly for female founders. And she said, what was it in your previous career or experience that led you to start your business?
Absolutely. It's the having your finger in the air as a journalist and knowing what coming trends are and spotting things. I still do this now. I can see something, I can see a brand, and I know it's going to be successful because I know that it's doing something that nobody else is doing. It's doing it in an original way. It's tapped into a trend, whatever. So when I tasted the world's first organic chocolate at the time when the chefs were starting to come out of the kitchen and talk about ingredients and terroir, and the world was waking up to kind of organic farming. And we could be the first in the world bringing an organic chocolate to market that was also delicious, I knew that it was newsworthy because I'd been a journalist. And so that actually shaped my decision to do it. I knew that if a press release about this landed on my desk, I would want to write about it. And so that's what it gave me. And as a former fashion magazine editor and as someone who's worked in women's magazines for years and years and years, I can just spot a trend.
So that proven point from your journalistic days that you knew you had in you, it was enough for you to go, right, this is it.
And the other thing was that because I'd been a journalist, I knew how to do your job, basically, Julia.
Yes.
I knew how to PR it. I'd been on the receiving end of forests worth of press releases over the years, and I knew what pushed my buttons and what didn't push my buttons. And how to catch a journalist's attention with a catchy headline, guilt-free chocolate ? Well, almost. So that was what led me to feel like I could do this business.
And is there a question that you would like to ask the next guest? It could be anything about starting a business.
What in your childhood might have given someone a clue as to what you do now?
Wonderful. Thank you, Jo, so much for your time. I really, really appreciate all of the advice that you have shared.
Can I give you some podcast recommendations?
Yes, please.
So among the podcasts that I listen to, I think Holly Tucker's Conversations of Inspiration is one of the best podcasts out there for anyone with a startup, basically.
Yeah.
She has the most incredible guests. I have been on it, but she has everybody from Jay Blades to Tim Smith to Marcia Kilgore, Bobby Brown. She absolutely nails it every single week.
She manages to get stuff out of people that you would never imagine was there. She's amazing. And her Instagram with, I think it's Small Business Pharmacy, they do deep dives into specialist topics. So that huge amount of free content that people can just absorb, lap up.
Completely. And I learn something every single time I listen. And I also listen to Diary of a CEO with
Stephen Bartlett,
which is brilliant. And I listened on Audible to Atomic Habits, which is a really good business book, etc. So for me, and I think for anyone who stares at a screen all day long, podcasts are brilliant ways to take in yet more information without actually kind of giving yourself more eye strain.
And you can get the ironing and the cooking done at the same time. So when you're starting business and doing 5 things at all times, for me, I'm completely at peace with the fact I'm doing my exercise and learning.
Exactly.
And a third podcast recommendation? Do you have another one? Or another book?
Anything by Richard Branson. I mean, I'm sure everyone says that, but, I love the way he just has forged his own path and torn up the rule book and like me, I think was told he would never amount to anything in this world. So his books are fantastic.
And it's the reassurance as well.
Yes, exactly. And that kind of, don't tell me it can't be done. I love that about his ventures.
Thank you so much, Jo. I so appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm glad we made it work.
If you'd like to contact Jo, you can find all of her details in the show notes along with a recap of the advice that she has so kindly shared. Thank you for listening to How to Start Up. I hope these conversations offer you some confidence, encouragement and reassurance that you're on the right track. If you enjoy this podcast, I'd be so appreciative if you were to rate, review and subscribe, as it will really help other people starting a company discover it. Of course, if you've got any questions at all on PR communications or podcasting, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me, because at Fallowfield & Mason we love supporting startups.